Okay, well, we are on our final episode of In Conservation with for this particular series, which is the fifth series. And if you've missed any of the series, there's all to be seen on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, which is called The Urban Bird World. And for those who are tuning in for the first time, it's In Conservation with Idea is all about talking to people who are movers and shakers within the world of conservation and who have a story to tell. And there could be anyone ranging from illustrious people, as I have here in front of me now, Erica, to other illustrious people who aren't, so decorated, but still illustrious. So I want to introduce to you Erica McAlister, Dr. Erica McAlister to people who are naughty. For me, she's the lordess of the flies. And if she was a fly, she'd be Erica McAlister, a fly. Please welcome Erica, and thank you, Erica, for coming. Where are you and how are you?
I'm in a bedroom up the stairs in London. I am good, thank you. I'm very good. I've had a very busy day. We have just received news that we've got some big funding. I work at the Natural History Museum, and we've just received some news that our little fly group have got some money to go out and we can go and sequence a lot of flies in the UK. So this is really good for flies, really good for conservation, and subsequently, it's good for your two-footed flying things. So it all helps.
Yeah, Eric and I have had this ongoing thing for the last how many years regarding flies versus or insects versus birds. But let me just quickly tell you about Erica. Firstly, she's just produced yet another book. Her previous books have all been sort of awarded, but this one, Metamorphosis, and is it Metamorphosis? How flies have
How insects, changing our world.
Yeah. She is the principal curator. This is a time you can laugh at me now because I am terrible when it comes to Latin names. Diptera, flies, and Siphonaptera, fleas. Is that right?
So what does terra mean, Mister?
Ground.
So Ptera is wings.
Oh, is it? Okay.
So you think of pterodactyl. That's a good way of remembering it. So pterodactyl is the flying fingers, yeah, pterodactylus. And so when it comes to order level, it's all Greek. You can literally say it's all Greek to me. It is all Greek. So Diptera, Diptera, 2 wings. Siphonaptera, so siphon, so you can guess it's got a siphon. Aptera is aptera, so without wings. So a sucking insect without wings. So it's fleas. So flies and fleas are my babies.
That is why you are the lordess of the flies. I stand humbled. My face is red. I stand correct. In fact, you said it's slightly pink, actually.
It's red anyway, so yeah.
And lower brachyera.
Brachycera. Yeah, my advice with pronunciation is just do it really fast. Just really fast. And either people go, or they don't worry, just get through it. I remember doing my PhD and I just stared at this fly family called Ceratophragonidae. And honestly, when you see it written down, you're like, oh no. And if you don't do it at speed, halfway through, you fall over all the letters, you mix them up, and you're like, okay, this is a disaster. And then I found out later on in life, everybody abbreviates anything. So instead of Ceratophragonidae, I'm just Cerats. And you're like, oh. So I kind of feel cheated.
Well, if I was in your world, I'd be saying chunky flies that include bee flies and robber flies and fungus gnats and mosquitoes. I think I'd rather sort of say in those terms.
You're very much a birder.
Anyway, you've carried out many research projects with mosquitoes, both in the UK and abroad, recently working with DNA extraction on historic specimens, which is really fascinating. Erica is currently working on urban nature projects, rewilding projects, as well as general biodiversity projects, both in the UK and abroad. And recently you've been to Peru, Honduras, and Romania, and you're working on describing many new species of Diptera. from Dominica with both internal and external collaborators. And as for your professional commitments, you're very much involved in public engagement, which you're brilliant at, by the way, both in the museum and externally giving talks to both professional and amateur natural history organizations, as well as in schools, at festivals, and on the radio, including narrating a Radio 4 series, Metamorphosis, How Insects Transformed Our World 2 series, and Who's the Pest. Erica has published popular science books, The Secret Life of Flies. I think we actually had you as a guest on In Conservation with a couple of years ago talking about that, actually during lockdown maybe.
I think it was lockdown, yeah.
Which won an award for zoological communication by ZSL, the Zoological Society of London. The Inside Out of Flies, A Bug's World, that's long listed for the Wainwright Prize, no less, for children's writing on nature and conservation, and shortlisted for the Royal Society Children's Book Award. I mean, how more illustrious can you get? I mean, there's more, by the way, guys. There's more. Erica is a chair of the Diptera. What's the what?
Dipteris.
The Dipteris Forum, honorary fellow of the Royal Entomological Society. I said it really quickly.
Yeah.
And honorary fellow of the British Naturalists Society.
Yeah, careful how you say that.
So that is some great stuff there. Going back to Radio 4, what was that like, talking about the metamorphosis and how insects transformed our world? What shape did that take?
Oh, so this, I have to say, my co-producer is a genius. He basically took this over-enthusiastic entomologist, aka me, and turned me into this almost coherent adult. He was amazing at we would both get, so he was very much more involved with the history. He's been doing science communications at Radio 4 for many years. So we'd started off with this theme that we really wanted to talk about these historically hidden figures. So, for example, everyone's heard of Charles Darwin, or Chas Daz, as I affectionately call him. Maybe people have heard of Alfred Russel Wallace. Okay, but can you name any more entomologists out there? And what we weren't hearing stories from was from people from all different walks of life, from females, from hidden figures everywhere. So we wanted not just to talk about one group of insects, because when people talk about insects, there's all like the butterflies or the bees or whatever. We wanted to get all the stories out there and all these hidden figures. And so it was just like, you know, when you just put nerds in a room, and it was just great, because we'd have a little chat and we'd talk about what we wanted to. So, for example, one of my absolute favorites, and I know this is Adrian's favorite, was this guy called Charles Henry Turner. So he's this Afro-American, and he did honeybees. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of honeybees. They are a farmyard animal to me. But what he did do was phenomenal. And I think, as this podcast is, you know, we're talking about urban nature and things like that and conservation. He is this incredible figure over 100 years ago. It's transformative in his research, and his research was in his garden. And so listening to this guy's story, he was phenomenal. So his family, his mum and dad found amazing people. Like, this is during the American Civil War. There's a civil rights going. Sorry, you've got all these things going off. He's this black man. He's put himself through university. He's got a PhD. During his PhD, he's published 3 publications in science, which, no thanks, I'm not even going to manage one in my lifetime. Okay, so this dude is beyond belief. Because of the color of his skin, he couldn't carry on, and so he went and worked in a black school. But that didn't put the man off. And then his wife died, and it still didn't put him off. So he's raising, and his daughter died. So he's raising 2 boys in a school. He's very good at it, but it's not exactly where he wanted to be. He's facing all of these things, and yet this man is researching. And basically, Fritsch, who did all the waggle dance, who got the Nobel Prize, Charles Henry Turner had done all the research previously. So the only thing he hadn't got right was the color, because the bees don't see in the color in the same way. But everything else, he had worked out this bee intelligence, this bee communication, and everything by studying his garden. And just listen to the way I'm talking about it, honestly, because this is what Adrian and I were like. We were just like, this guy is amazing. And the more you read about him, the more you get swallowed up. And then, so you have these characters, and then you have the insects themselves. And obviously, I may be a little bit passionate about the insects. And when you get me on flies, you know it. There's just no stopping me. I'm a nightmare. And so that was no problems. But then we're looking at the innovative ways that people are looking at insects today. So it's how non-entomologists or non-biologists or whatever are looking outside in. So it kind of, there's three parts to every story, and it really ticks every nerd bit for me. We've got a beautiful bit on history. We've got the insects, the entomology themselves. And basically, there's so much we have to learn about them, and we can look at them every which way, and they're telling us something. So it was great fun.
That Afro-American entomologist really interested me because there's very few. I mean, a few years ago, I approached the One Show on BBC to put together a story about people forgotten in science, in natural history science, women in particular, in fact, mostly. But I couldn't think of one Afro-American or person of color entomologist, biologist.
Yeah, there's more. But I'm not going to tell you the others because we want to do more radio series. But trust me, once you start looking and you realize, and the thing, and also you got to think about like the global south. So in the global south, lots of the people were doing the work, and either their work was subsumed in, or the publications they were in, we're not reading because they're not in English. So there's all of these hidden figures that we're now finally, we're translating everything. We're able to find all this information. But there's an amazing, another Afro-American female entomologist who, she almost makes Charles look like a just, worthless. I mean, she's so phenomenally good. And she's set up a school and she's doing all this research, and it's like, wow. I mean, I genuinely feel quite inadequate when I read these stories. I'm like, and there's another one, there's a female who's more well-known, Maria Sibella Merien, who did all the amazing art that a lot of people would know in entomology. But in like 1600s, she took a boat from Europe to Suriname, and she was 52. 52, her first field trip across the planet, and she took her 21-year-old daughter with her as a field assistant. I'm moaning. I've just been to Peru, and I got on a plane, and I got picked up, and I was able to use the internet, and everything was fine. She's doing all of this, and she's probably producing arguably the first ecological textbook on the planet, because she's thinking about life cycles and hosts and everything. And her field notebooks, mine are pathetic. This woman had skill and whatever. So I just feel that we have, as Darwin said, it is definitely the descent of man. we need to pick ourselves up again.
I know we may have spoken about this before, but can we go back in history? I don't understand why a woman like yourself, or a person like yourself, actually nothing to do with your gender, had or picked up on flies. I mean, for most people, flies are annoying. They don't learn. You say go away, and they still come back. You warn them again. Listen, if you don't go away, I may swipe out at you. You may get injured. You may even be killed. All right? Please, just do that for me. There's a window there. And also, I remember watching Family Guy once, and there was an episode when the fly was upstairs. He came down, the window was open, but the bottom part wasn't, and he was going around the bottom part of the window saying, "Oh, there must be a way out here. Oh, you know what?" And everyone else in the family go, "No, just go higher, just go a bit higher." And he says, "You know what? I'll go back upstairs." Why are flies so interesting to you? Because I find it really difficult.
Why? Now, have you thought about the average intelligence of an owl? Okay. I mean, let's look at owls. How intelligent is an owl, young man? Go on. We all know they're not. Okay. So if you're going to talk intelligence across species, owls pretty low. I think the average mollusk can, just laughs in the face of an owl going, I'm so sorry, what? Owls, they look cute, but there's nothing going on. Their brain size is that big. The intelligence of a fly, so what you're forgetting in your mammal body is that flies are multi specialized. So they don't just have one pair of eyes. So they have, first of all, they have these huge compound eyes, and which may have up to 6,000 ommatidia, these photo units. So they have 6,000 images going on at once, but that's not quite true, because within each photo unit that's split, so that they have 7 images being taken in. So they have 36 images going in at one point. They have these ocelli, some of them, which are these light sensors at the top. So they're stabilizing their place. So they have hairs all over their body. Your hairs look cute. What do? Not a lot. Fly hairs, they're telling them all sorts of things. They've got proprioceptors all over their body. They are launching around. I can barely operate in a 2-dimensional space. You should see me ungracefully getting off a sofa. It's not well. Flies, this 3-dimensional space going around. And when you're moaning about them in your house, youngster, first of all, flies, like most animals, do not understand home ownership. So why wouldn't it be there? Secondly, no offense to you, and I do love you, but you smell, okay? You all stink. Your houses are just full of a debris of many lives living in there. Your dinners, your food. So you've provided this smorgasbord to this fly who's going, why on earth would I leave this? There is so much disgustingness around it. And these are just the flies in your house. They taste with their feet. So every time they land on the window, they're picking up signatures. So Fred, who was there last week, has told them, don't worry, he always leaves the chicken out. Just wait a few hours and you can get it. There's huge amounts of communication. They also see in UVA, UVB, and UVC. So they're seeing polarized light. They're seeing all of these things. So that clear window to them is not a clear window. So they've got all of these things going on. But you were just describing the ones in your house, of which there's maybe 10 species. In the UK, there's another 7,000 species of fly. So you name it, the flies get there. They have tarsa in everything. So if you're a nosy, interfering busybody, such as myself, the only things that can really tell you about what's going on in our entire planet are the little flies. Because if it's not the adults, it's the larvae that are in there finding out and exploring. So they're just fun.
But when did that happen? When did you realize all of that? I mean, when did you kind of make that decision, the mental decision? I don't mean mental in terms of,
I think they chose me. I think that's what happens. They take you aside and say, you are one of us now. And I'm like, oh, okay. I have grown up from being a maggot. I had a pretty feral upbringing. My parents were like, no, you were nice. And I'm like, come on, it was pretty feral. So we had, I was given a microscope probably too early for what is sensible for a child. So dead animals, the usual stuff, stick them under the microscope. I'd look at maggots crawling out of decomposing bodies. So I didn't have the same sensibilities as a lot of my peers. You grow up with a geologist and a physicist as a father, and my mum was she did Greek and Latin, so she was all about death and carnage. So you grow up with those two parents, and you're like, okay. But we also loved the countryside. I mean, we spent so much time in the countryside. We didn't watch TV, so I always knew there was going to be something to do with nature. But I wasn't totally. I didn't want to do scrub bashing and things like that. I wanted to learn more about it because I was nosy, and I always knew I liked insects because anybody can learn about insects. You could just sit in your garden and you can watch and you can learn and you can help with science. You don't have to run off to find a lesser blue-bottled southern, whatever your flappy things are called. You could just sit and you could learn about things. And so I started off entomology, and it just honed and honed and honed till it was like, do you know what? Flies make more sense. And they are, I don't know what people don't remember is that there's some really, really cute flies. Like, shall I share the screen?
Yeah, it's interesting. You'll be proud of me, Erica, because I wrote an article for a magazine the other day on, well, they wanted me to write an article on pests, and on what we should do in the summer and how to avoid them. And the first sentence, I thought of you, and the first sentence was, I find the word pest very uncomfortable. In fact, I think that if we could talk to the animals, they would describe us as pests. And then I went on to defend mosquitoes, would you believe?
Good man, good
I
man.
actually said I didn't like them, I admitted it, but I defended them. I even defended cockroaches. I can't stand them, but I defended them. But the only thing I couldn't defend, and I really tried hard, was bed bugs. I do not understand what role they have on the planet.
Okay, so nothing has a role. And absolutely nothing has a role. There is no purpose to anything. All the purposes of anything is to survive and reproduce. And the bed bugs have the most awesome reproductive strategy out, which I don't think is appropriate to tell your listeners right now. But believe me, it's less than PG.
Come on, let's tell us, because we've had worse things than this. We've been on In Conservation With in the past. We've talked about duck sex, and we've even watched an ejaculation. So we can take.
So they practice what's called traumatic insemination.
Dramatic.
So, traumatic. I think in that name you can understand what's going on. Right, it's in the dark, and males are not very good at the best time of finding the hole. And in the dark, it's even worse, right? This is in your bed, everyone. And by the way, if you go on the tube, a lot of this happens on the tube, which always makes me giggle.
That's why I always stand up on the tube.
Always stand up. People think you're being really polite. It's like, no, I know what's going on here. So they are quite fantastic creatures, and slightly sexually dimorphic. The female's slightly bigger than the males, and his penis is just like a sword, and he just basically just stabs her anywhere in the body. Okay. Anywhere, and the sperm will migrate, because remember, they have we have a closed system, they have an open system, so the sperm can migrate to where it is. And now it's called traumatic because obviously she doesn't really often have sex, because it could be quite damaging to her. My favorite example of how this is adapted is the New Zealand. There's a Zeus bug in New Zealand, but the females have got so fed up with this, she's created this spongy layer on her back so the male can just sit in it, and then he feeds off this spongy layer whilst just permanently copulated, and he rides around on her back for a week, and then she gets rid of it. See, insects way more fun when it comes to their sex lives, and that's, there's all sorts. But we can learn things from this, because we can learn about how they maneuver in the dark, how they can smell each other, how they can communicate, how all of these things goes on. We can learn about mating systems. And all of this has an impact. There are lessons to be learned. All these different ecological niches that the insects get into, they can help. We're using them to help us understand how to, like, the first animal in space was a fly. Okay, which is just brilliant. I like the idea of sending up winged creatures to space. And they went up in 1947 and came back down again. If ever I would be able to, like Dr. Dolittle, and communicate with insects, go, so what did you think? They sent a spider up into space, and she just got freaked out. She couldn't build her web. She couldn't do anything. She's just floating around, but she lived quite happily for a long time after she came back.
They spent billions of pounds launching a rocket with a spider in it.
Yeah, it's all right, because many other things go up. And what we do, this isn't just any old fly that's sent up, it's Drosophila melanogaster. So this is the most appropriate model on the planet. So a most useful model, if you're going to make a term like that. So we've been looking at their hearts. So they've been looking at how they can survive in space, how they can reproduce in space. And they could take some up that have just only been reared in space, and they bring them back down to Earth, and they see what happens to these hearts. And if you read the papers, I am not doing space travel for a long time, because the degeneration is really quite rapid. And it's like, this is a tiny little fly. Can you imagine what the human generation would be with these sorts of things? What's going on? So we are letting the flies do all the hard work. So we're trying to understand our physiology, our genomics, everything about doing when we're in these really adverse conditions by all these little flies that are already in there.
Fascinating. What's this one here then?
So this is come on, this is cute, isn't it?
It's fluffy, yeah.
No, you got to admit it's cute, or I'm not going to continue.
He's very cute.
So this is a bee fly. So these are all photos of flies in my garden. Okay, and I live in urban South London. You were North London, weren't you?
West.
West.
Big
You're
difference.
a posh boy.
Big difference.
Okay, yeah, look at him. I'm not from London, so I'm okay. But my little urban South London garden. So this is a bee fly, and these are out now. These are amazing. These are like the harbingers of spring. So we know that spring is finally here when I see these in the garden. Although the UK weather at the moment has been appalling. So I've only seen these for 2 days. And they're really important early pollinators. Really long proboscis. So they look like fluffy flying narwhals. You see them like around the garden, go like that. And they're little, and they're really cute. And when they have sex, the female kind of drags the male along. He's like behind her, going, facing backwards and being an idiot. And what was really lovely is that we do bee fly watch every year, and we get loads of people making observations, and this is really important. So there were some lovely images of them extending their proboscis, so they're able to get down into these long tube flowers. So a lot of the other insects can't get down into them, so they're able to do that. This is Bombylius major. She, with the other Bombylius species, she has a bum bag, so she twerks, which is quite cool, you got to admit. So she would take up a little bag of gravel that she coats her eggs with. Oh, she's an appalling mother. She just throws eggs around the garden, you know. It's just hurls them and hopes for the best. And she does. She's generally trying to hurl them near a solitary bee nest, because they are parasitoids of Andrena bees. And this is where the public goes, oh no, they're eating the baby bees. This is horrible. And it's like, well, actually, this is a very important part of life. Does everyone hate the cuckoos? No. And that's the whole thing. It's funny, if you put it into a different term, if you put it into birding terms, how many birds, how many siblings in a nest will kick out all the other eggs? I mean, it's just horrendous. But, you know, you talk about one earwig that eats its babies, and everyone goes, no, that's just not right.
Well, I guess you can say the same for things like barn owls, you know, when the biggest youngster might decide to chow down its sister or something.
Yeah. I mean, that's just not pleasant.
No.
But everyone still loves barn owls. Barn owls genuinely can't do anything wrong, can they? And yet everything about them. Oh, bless them. It is. I love them. But yes. So you've got, and then the whole lovely thing about flies, and probably, I think it's 80% of the planet, because that's how many the insects, I think all insects make up 85% of life on Earth, of described species, and 80% of them go through this complete metamorphosis. So most animals on the planet have this life cycle, but yet we will consider them rare and weird and alien, and yet our life is dominated by these creatures. So they go through a complete metamorphosis. They have a larval stage, a pupal stage, an adult stage. And the pupal stage is, to me, what happens during that is, I think, the most incredible thing on this planet. The idea of being able to reorganize 90% of your body tissue into a completely different form, I genuinely think it physically makes me stop. And I don't use the word awesome, because I think we overuse it and it's not really true. But this is awesome. This is an awe-inspiring thing to watch. And
I was going to ask, why go through all that trouble? Why can't you just stay as a larvae and just live your life and mate? And then, because larvae obviously well, not obviously, but usually tend to live a lot longer than the adults.
Yeah.
Why bother? Why bother going through all that expensive change to live for a few days?
Because the larval stage is all about eating. Okay. So they basically, they've got no reproductive units. They generally have no mobility. Some of them will have legs, so caterpillars will have legs, some beetles, grubs, but flies have no legs. So they're kind of limited to where they are. But the adult, they've got legs, wings, and reproductive organs. So at that point, it's like, let's transform into this. Let's go for it. We can disperse, we can get all of these different habitats. Whereas like a baby bird is just a baby bird that goes into a bigger bird. It's like, well, what's that about, mate? But and you have to waste all those resources on the baby bird because it has to produce these wings or whatever. Well, why don't you just chow down for a couple of months, just solid it, and then poof, one big go, bang, you're another you're a different form. I just think you're looking at this all wrong, David. I think you
So,
need.
so when they become adults, they're effectively sex machines.
Don't say that when I'm having a sip of wine, but yes, it's exactly that. It is. So as I just say, it's born, eat, shag, die. And what more could you want in life? It's just. And they often live in they don't compete. So the larvae don't compete with the adults. They're in completely different habitats. The larvae are often vegetarians. So some of them would be decomposing larvae. They eat feces or whatever, dead bodies, lovely things like that. And the adults will all be pollinators. So ecologically, sorry, how many birds in the UK are pollinators?
Birds in the UK,
Yeah,
or maybe accidentally, some might be
yeah.
like blue tit or something, or
But that's it. That's it. Leave it to the flies. Don't worry to produce the food for the birds. And so it's like, so if we go to the next, how do I? So this is another one. This is a hoverfly this time. It's called the Batman hoverfly. I think, can you see why it's called the Batman hoverfly?
yeah, it's got the Batman insignia just behind his eyes, hasn't it?
Yeah. So we can nicely see it there, the Batman. So this is a Myothropa florea. So this is a hoverfly whose larvae are part of the rat-tailed maggots group. Have you ever looked through your compost?
I haven't got compost.
You haven't got compost. You need a compost for
I
the
haven't got a
maggots.
garden.
Have you not got a little compost on your shelf in the kitchen?
No.
Oh, well, I obviously
But you
laugh.
encourage me to have maggots in my compost in my kitchen.
Well, I won't say what our kitchen is like, but I'm saying if they turn up, it's nature, isn't it? It's conservation in situ, isn't it? But these fabulous pollinators as adults, and the larvae are the original hipsters. They're recycling. They're turning our waste or environmental waste into really good nutrients. So again, really important little species, lovely looking creatures, very big, very noisy, buzzing through your garden, doing all sorts. And the difference between flies and say the bees, a lot of the bees that we really like, the bumbles and the honeybee, which is that these are they spend more time. They haven't got homes to go home to. It's not like they go home to their sisters and all have a chit chat at night. These are out by themselves, and so they have more flower visits. So they may not be effective in one visit as say the honeybee, but they're going to more and more and more. So they're really, really useful. Do you want another one? Let me do.
Yeah.
Oh, this. So again, like we think of like the hoverflies a lot. This is a caliphorid. So this is a blue bottle blowfly. And so everyone's like, oh, these are your disgusting ones, as you call them. They're not. They're absolutely amazing. They're like full on bristle. I have no idea what half these bristles mean. We use them to identify them. Look at their little sausage antennae with these beautiful fluffy arista coming off them. So we can identify them by their faces, all sorts of things going on. But these, their larvae are the ones that are the first to turn up at bodies. So we use these for forensic entomology. We also use them in debridement therapy. So you can go into the NHS and you can ask for maggots in your wound. So it's like, wow, that's quite cool. But also the adults, we're now beginning to realize, are really important pollinators. So much so that we're encouraging these in greenhouses for, say, bell peppers, things like that. In the Arctic region, that housefly that you wanted to kill, that housefly, their family are the top pollinators in the Arctic.
So what do they normally eat? I mean, why, okay, pollinators, I get it, but why is it that they have this connection with sort of going on your food and you think, where have you
their larvae do as well. So they will eat, a lot of them will eat everything and anything. Okay. And your food is protein rich. So a lot of the time it's the females going in there because they're just mothers caring about their babies. And who am I to have a go at a mother? Just saying, David, it's wrong of you to do that. And they're caring about their babies, and their babies. So the best food source, the most protein rich, is going to be blood. Okay. And then we go on to meat, and then we go down, and feces. I mean, feces is a wonderful food substance. And so they have to get in there. They get in there quickly. Like on a good wind, these flies can smell a dead body from about 7 kilometers away.
Wow.
So they're really, really good at getting in there.
What's that extrapolated out to human terms, do you know?
What can we smell?
Yeah, if we like you watch these movies, The Fly,
Oh yeah.
it gets incredible strength and you can see lots. If you had a sense of smell like a fly, I wonder what that would translate to.
Okay, so we use sniffer bees for, like, they did sniffer bees. I did some work on this, and they're easier to train than dogs. Dogs take 8 months, bees take 5 minutes. And I mean, yeah, it's just the difference is like quite phenomenal. And once the bee's done its job, it can go home at the end of the night, so they're fine. And their parts per mil, what they can smell, particular parts per mil, I think is better than dogs. I'm not quite sure. I can't remember. It's way better than us. So I guess, I don't know. I know the hearing of a mosquito is slightly better than humans.
Just slightly.
Well, the thing about just in their size, they hear the same as us. So if they were the human equivalent, they can hear a lot further. And mosquitoes practice what we call the cocktail party effect. So, when you go in a room and somebody's going, oh, do you know that David Lindo? All he does is talk about terrible birds, and he's just like one track. And you can hear it from across the room. When you hear your name and you're like, hold on, what's going on? Who's talking about me? And then you can stop and you can hone out mute out all the other voices, can't you? And you can just listen in to whoever's moaning about you quietly behind your back. And so male mosquitoes, if they're flying along and if they suddenly hear a lady of their dreams, they can zoom out, they can get rid of all the other noise to focus on where this lady is, and they can zoom into her. And the same when females are trying to find us lot, they can just listen to us and focus. Sorry, that's the doorbell downstairs.
That's the pizza delivery.
That's a mosquito, yeah.
Okay, what's next for us?
Okay, so the next one. Right. Now, this is an Aristella. This is Epistrophe elegans. And it's just beautiful watching these things in the garden. Really nice. Move into like the Siphene group. So these have larvae that are aphidophagous. So they eat aphids. So not only are the adults really important pollinators, but they are little biological weapons. And this is really important for your garden. So you really want to be encouraging these in. This is really important for conservation. So instead of putting, we were just talking about this earlier about the term weed and the term pest and all of that. And even in supermarkets, and you go into supermarkets and there's that shelf that's like, kill this, kill that, kill everything. And you know, this day and age, when we are all acknowledging that we've got this insect apocalypse, this massive destruction, birders are seeing it because their birds are not surviving as much because their diet is poor. We are killing out everything, and yet still we're advocating killing everything in our gardens. And we just have to let nature do what it does best. So we encourage these hovers in. They will get rid of some of the things. They will control the balance, and they will do it naturally. So yes, we can lose some veg or whatever. And I really don't care about people's ornamental plants because that just winds me up. We shouldn't really have ornamental plants. We should just have either endemic plants or grow stuff that we can eat. The idea of cutting down natural land to plant silly flowers that come from the other side of the planet. I've gone on a side track.
I agree with you totally.
I mean, if I was to become a small, there's a hand gone up. Are you answering?
No, we're doing the questions at the end, okay. Right at the very end.
So if I was to, you know, one of the things I would sort out is not having ornamental. It will have to just be local plants, local flowers. It's the only time I sound slightly Daily Mail. But I'm doing it for all the right reason. And also, talking of Daily Mail, I'm going to talk about these immigrants, because I love these immigrants. These are fantastic immigrants. These immigrants, this one here, they turn up, they come across in their hundreds, thousands, billions.
They still let women take our jobs.
They exactly do that. These ones, these foreigners that turn up, they're fantastic, because what they do is they mate with the locals, and they have a higher fecundity when you get these mixed populations going on. So they produce more offsprings, and they're greater at controlling the environment, and they're greater at nutrient recycling. They're greater at the job of biological control units. Everything about these immigrants are amazing. And so this is a Eupioides, this is Luniger. And my friend was doing this work, Will, and it's amazing work. He sat up in mountains in the Mediterranean, counting flies going over his head. I know it's slightly more technical, but it was basically came down. They did a lot of imaging of these.
Hang on, how counting flies? I mean, that
yeah, there is a computer involved.
Minutes,
there's a computer involved.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Don't panic, because he counted billions. I mean, absolutely billions of these flies. And what's really interesting, that from North Africa, from Turkey, from Iran, Iraq, these flies are flying across the Mediterranean to end up in the UK every spring. 4 billion hoverflies turn up. We know that trillions of other things are up there floating. And these flies are able to buck the trend because they are flying high. They can see isolated pockets of vegetation, so they can drop down. It takes 3 generations to arrive in the UK, for 1 generation to go back. So they're spreading genes. These are turning up. They have, their larvae are phytophagus, they're bug eaters, and they can have maybe between 600 and 1,200 offspring, because they're just having this naughtiness with these foreigners turning up. It's all a bit of like, it just reminds me of an Italian exchange students turning up. It's, you know, everything's go, and it's just, it's a brilliant example. And we're realizing, so we think about birds migrating. Birds know nothing. These lot are just doing everything. And, you know, it's just the idea of that, if we look above us, what on earth is going on? You know, we were at RSPB Pulborough at the weekend, and all these birders, and you know what you like, you got your massive, like your super long lens, and I have barely made it a meter, and there's so much going on. And I was like, wow, if the birders could, if they look up, and if they can see the insects like I see the insects here, can you imagine what vision that must be going on? I think, anyway.
No, it's interesting. I think, yeah, I think you have to have a sort of a scope for everything, really, as opposed to just looking down one channel. You're right. I think in my world, a lot of people don't actually recognize or look at anything else other than birds. I mean, obviously, some people are interested in more glamorous insects like the dragonflies and butterflies and moths. But yeah, I mean, I often go out. I'm in Spain and I see clouds of insects, and I'm thinking, that's great food for birds, and that's all I think about.
But I mean, as when I was doing my PhD, the head of department was like, "Oh, you're doing a bird food PhD," and I was like, "Oh, okay." So that was, but I can't not look at everything else because everything for me, there's this huge cascade of life, and I tried to hang around with a few more botanists because I want to, and coming from a father who taught geology as well, it's like when you start putting everything together, it's this huge jigsaw of life, and that is just what fascinates me, and this is why conservation, I think, we need to not be taking it in such isolation. Everything is like this huge planet, and this planet is so amazing. The probability of the life on this planet is weird and odd anyway. And will it happen again? We don't know. Has it happened again? Maybe. But as far as we know, we haven't found anything like this yet. So we've just got to bloody well look after it. It's phenomenally good.
Yeah, it's just getting that message across, isn't it? A lot of people don't get it. They are so closed and so devoid and divorced from nature.
I know. I mean, it was during lockdown, and I felt the planet breathe again. And it was like, maybe this is it. Maybe we've got a good thing going on. Maybe this is, through the heartache, there is something that's really good happening. And I was watching people pound in the streets again, and there was all these people paying attention to the little things in life. And then immediately it was over. Bush, sales on, come shop, go back to your non-green. And it was like, it just breaks your heart.
It does, yes.
So much of our planet is in these urban environments, and they don't take any time within that to think about their place in the planet.
Absolutely. Have you got any other images?
Yes. So this is another thing. My biggest thing is that within insects, how many people get it wrong? So this was it was Earth Day yesterday. Yep. So it's a big day celebrating, trying to get people to think about it. And this was an organization, Earth Day org. And they were talking about doing this bee quiz. And this is not a bee. This is a hoverfly. It's very much a fly. And I'm like, do you know what? This really annoys me. It really does annoy me. Because even people who are naturalists or huge in conservation, the token level that insects get is just a joke. It's like, hold on a minute, they are the bedrock, they're fundamental. If I was to, if you were to say, oh, it's a lesser flat-footed blue meanie bird, and I was like, it looks like a blackbird, and you'll be like, it's obviously not, it's got a pink quill, and I'd be like, okay. Like, I would be laughed out. We just wouldn't do it with the vertebrates. And yet with invertebrates, we give them no time. Everything is all like, oh, let's do this. And it's all these save our bees, save this, save that. And it's like, hold on, just look into that, because honeybees do not need saving. They are a domesticated animal. They do not need saving. The wild bees do, the solitary bees do, but don't say just do one, you can't do the other. So I just wish people would say bees, instead of just saying, oh, we got to save the bees, is save the pollinators or save the insects.
Yeah, well said. Well said.
It just, so these sort of things, it's like, I get the apoplectic. So I think, oh yeah, that is just my last one. These are all these beautiful things that turn up in my garden. So this is another lovely hoverfly, and this is one out at the moment as well. But what is really good about all this sort of things is a lot of these images you can take on your phones.
Yeah.
And the thing is, that's a record That's an identification that helps us understand science. So by knowing when these insects appeared, we can look at climate change. By knowing when the adults are there, we can see whether it's one generation, two generations, whether their adult stage is decreasing, increasing. We can look at the size of them. We can look at the condition of them. We can do so much analysis just by an image. And so everybody and anybody can help with conservation.
Fabulous. I would, like people often ask me, I'm going to stop sharing your screen so I can see your face again. People ask me, I'd love to go birding with you. I'd love to go insecting with you. Is that the
entomologicalizing? Yeah, no, insecting. Now there is no technical name, but entomologicalizing is how we giggle about it. But basically, entomology is not for active people, because it takes me an hour to walk like 4 meters. So if you're happy with that, there's so many stories of people going off to these nature reserves and they get out of the car in their car park and they've managed it 4 feet and they've been there for 2 hours. So it is amazing going, because you just see the world differently. It's so lovely.
Yeah. I've got a couple of random questions for you. Firstly, fruit flies. How is it that all of a sudden you get a bunch of fruit flies around your fruit? Where the hell do they come from?
So luckily we disproved spontaneous generation quite a long time ago. So they don't just randomly appear. Your fruit, these are fruit flies, actually are more likely to be Drosophila. So they're vinegar flies. Now, your fruit in the bowl, it just being there, it's already given off different chemical cues. And immediately it will be aging in your fruit bowl. And in doing so, it's degenerating and it's given off beautiful phenols that smell like alcohol. So they are attracted to that decomposition. So they can get in there pretty much straight away. And they are designed to be able to lay eggs immediately. Anything that lives on an ephemeral habitat, but it's adapted to producing babies quickly, because they know they have to get in there, get the kids laid, kids have to hatch, and they have to take well of resources. So other things who live in things that aren't so ephemeral. So we think of like other things that have loads of plants and whatever. They will take longer to arrive. But dead bodies, decomposing anything, feces, they have to smell it and they can get in there immediately.
Wow. Okay. The other random question. At the moment in the bird world, it's been rocked slightly, well, in the US anyway, North America, by the idea of removing eponymous names. Now, insects, how does that work? Are there insects named after people?
Yes.
And that's one question. Number two, part two of that question, is there a similar sort of thing where people want to have more descriptive names? And thirdly, going back to the first question, or first part of the question, are there any insects named after you? McAlister.
Not enough, mate. So most of our names are Latin. We don't hang around with common names because common names are a nightmare. For example, describe a robin to someone around the world. You got different types of robin. Now, if we were to try this with insects, it just doesn't make any sense. Plus, for example, we have 5,000 small black flies. So good luck trying to figure out common names. So we stick with scientific names. Kids can handle scientific names. They do dinosaurs. They can handle scientific names. So most of the times it's those sort of things. So there are the Lepidopterists suffer more. They're a bit like birders. So these are butterfly moth people. So recently they changed the gypsy moth because they didn't like that. They thought it was bad. So it's got a new name. Can't remember because I can't remember common names. But there are some. I've named species after people. I've named as a thank you for their work in helping me get to where I was. So I've named a fly after my friend. This fly has really hairy legs, and so did she after 7 weeks of field work. So she's now described after a hairy leg fly. Never upset taxonomists, because we can record you in, longevity with our horrible names. That's what Linnaeus did when he first started describing what he called weeds. He named them after people he didn't like. But yes, this has been a huge debate in terms of our taxonomic names, because, for example, there is the Hitler beetle. And obviously this rightly or wrongly is nearly hunted to extinction, because everybody wanted a Hitler beetle, and these coleopterists, these beetle people, wanted the Hitler beetle in their collection. And I don't know whether these people are fans of Hitler or just because it was so unusual. So there have been arguments that this name should be changed. But we are all under a code. So our names, they have to specific requirements and things like that. So to change its name destabilizes, because you may have loads of publications may have this. So we're arguing whether we can just not do it bulk, but individual names, there's definitely should be changed. So botanists, there's Kaffir, which obviously is a very, it's not a polite term, it's not appropriate. So they have a lot of plants that are called Kaffir this and Kaffir that, and they're trying to figure out how they can change that.
What's Kaffir? Cafer?
Ka. So Kaffir is like indigenous, well, not even indigenous, it's like slave worker. So it's I think, don't quit. It's not a good, it's not. So it's like, okay, so they're trying to get rid of some of those things. And it does it makes sense in terms of humans to do this sort of thing, but it's not as easy as one thinks. So common names, you could do whatever you like with them, because I don't care about them. But the Latin names, the Latinized names, they have a strict binomial code. There's regulations, so we have to really think carefully about changing those. For example, Drosophila melanogaster, it's not a Drosophila melanogaster, right? It's meant to be in a different genus. But the whole world went, what? You can't change this name. This is ridiculous. All these labs. So this was the only example where the code went, whoa, okay, you can have this fake name. So we know that we can swap seeds. So I think with the Hitler beetle, I think that time is going to come where we're going to go, do you know what, this beetle, he's not good. He's not good. And for the beetle's sake, I mean, it's getting hunted to extinction. Did you ever read Terry Pratchett?
Well, generally.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, he did this thing about these trees, and these trees were amazing. But they got fed up with scientists, kept cutting them down to age them, to count the rings or whatever. So these trees developed numbers on the outside, so it would change with age. So the scientists could go, oh, look, this tree is 75 or whatever. But that backfired, because then people started wanting house numbers, so kept cutting down the trees to get numbers for their houses. And it is just like, you could just see nature going, there's no point with these humans. They just every which way, they just want to cock it up, don't they?
Bloody pests.
They are. If there's a pest, they are.
Yeah. Now listen, what's your favorite fly out of the 75 million species out there?
I can't. I got a soft spot for robber flies, because they're highly venomous and they can, dissolve the insides out of creatures, including ones taking down a hummingbird. So that's quite fun. I'll go with that for the moment then, just because you're bird people.
And if you could be anywhere in the world right now, where would you be?
Oh. Well, I'd be arguing the case here. Because I think I love traveling. I love all the fieldwork abroad. But I think there's still so much that we could do in our own back gardens and sing the praises and get people involved. Well,
I'd love to come to your back garden one day and have you take me around the first 5 inches of it in an hour. I'd love that, because I'll be fascinated. I think you won't turn me, but you'll definitely get me a bit more amenable to insects and flies in general. But Erica, thank you again for being here tonight, to this afternoon, and also good luck with the book Metamorphosis: how the insects have changed our world,
Yeah.
more or less.
Yeah.
Great book. Unfortunately, I haven't got a copy with me, but go and get it if you're watching this in the future. And if you are watching this in the future, please like and subscribe and tell all your friends, because there's so many fascinating things discussed on In Conservation With. And all that's left for me to say at the moment is I wish everyone a lovely summer, and also tune in the autumn for the next series of In Conservation With, and hopefully we'll have Erica back when she has another new book out, but it may be just back for a chat anyway. And in the meantime, keep looking up.
Exactly. And down and under and in and everywhere.